On the humid morning of August 17, 2022, hotel staff in Gaza discovered a body inside room 407 of the Al-Deira hotel. That body belonged to Awais Yasir, a Hamas drone engineer, whose death immediately sparked questions of espionage and assassination. He was slumped beside a desk, a faint chemical scent lingering in the air. On the nightstand rested an unusual object, a small mechanical spider, its legs jointed with steel. To untrained eyes, it seemed like an abandoned toy. Investigators entering the room described the scene as meticulously arranged. No signs of forced entry, no obvious wounds, and no theft. Awais's laptop had been wiped clean, its hard drive erased, leaving nothing but fragments of encrypted ghost files. Hotel workers whispered that the guest had been cautious, rarely leaving his room, constantly pulling curtains shut. Surveillance footage later revealed masked figures entering the hallway hours before his death, dressed as maintenance staff, carrying equipment that did not belong to the hotel. The Gaza police cordoned off the premises, sealing elevators, interrogating employees, and scanning for traces of poison. Yet the mechanical spider became the obsession. Why was it placed there, directly in view, its artificial eyes glinting beneath the hotel's fluorescent light? Rumors spread quickly across Gaza. Some claimed it was a new surveillance device. Others insisted it was a disguised weapon, capable of delivering lethal toxins through microscopic needles. Whatever the truth, the symbolism was unmistakable. Yasir had been hunted with precision. Within hours, whispers crossed Gaza's narrow streets and carried into international newsrooms. Awais Yasir was no ordinary man. He was the architect of a covert drone program, a figure whose work threatened to change the battlefield between Israel and Hamas. The discovery of his lifeless body was not merely a local tragedy. It reverberated through intelligence networks from Tel Aviv to Washington, from Doha to Ankara. Each capital wondered how much knowledge Yasir had carried, and who eliminated him. His drones were not hobbyist inventions. They were compact, deadly machines, capable of carrying explosives over fortified borders. For Hamas, they symbolized ingenuity under siege. For Israel, they represented a terrifying escalation, a threat that bypassed walls and iron domes. The timing of his death could not be ignored. Just weeks earlier, reports suggested Hamas was preparing a new wave of aerial attacks. Engineers like Yasir were critical to that ambition. Silencing him meant silencing progress, cutting wires before circuits connected. Intelligence analysts quickly pointed toward Mossad. The assassination bore their hallmarks: surgical precision, obscure weaponry, no digital fingerprints. Yet open acknowledgement never came. Denials surfaced, but silence echoed louder. Enemies understood the message. The invisible hand could strike anywhere, at any time. For Gaza, the stakes stretched beyond one man. His death threatened to cripple innovation, demoralize fighters, and warn others in the underground network of engineers. International observers asked whether the balance of technological warfare had shifted overnight, reshaping strategies on both sides. Who orchestrated the death of Awais Yasir, and why was such a method chosen? A mechanical spider left as both signature and warning. Was it Mossad, operating with ghost-like precision, or another hand seeking to reshape Gaza's fragile battlefield balance? Why was Yasir targeted at this precise moment? Was his death timed to cripple Hamas's drone program, or to signal dominance before an unseen conflict escalated? Did regional actors assist, or was the strike entirely orchestrated abroad? Could a man working behind closed hotel curtains truly evade the world's most sophisticated intelligence services? Or was he already doomed, marked months in advance by algorithms, human informants, and the relentless eyes of satellites orbiting overhead? Most haunting of all, what becomes of a movement when its brightest mind is erased in a single night? Does the loss silence ambition, or ignite vengeance? In espionage, the answer is never simple, and never final. Awais Yasir was born in 1984, in a narrow Gaza alley where the Mediterranean winds carried both salt and tension. His family belonged to Gaza's struggling middle class, navigating scarcity under blockade, yet preserving dignity through education, faith, and persistence. His father was a schoolteacher, patient and disciplined, often emphasizing mathematics as a universal language. His mother, a homemaker with literary passion, nurtured her children's imaginations through stories of resistance, survival, and the hope of returning dignity to their people. From childhood, Yasir displayed remarkable curiosity. Teachers remembered him dismantling radios to understand circuitry, sketching designs in worn notebooks, and asking questions that veered beyond ordinary lessons. He was quiet, almost shy, but his eyes reflected restless calculation. Electricity in Gaza was inconsistent, yet Yasir adapted. He scavenged old batteries, wired makeshift circuits, and rigged lights during blackouts. Neighbors recalled him climbing rooftops to fix antennas or repairing appliances for families who could not afford replacements. His reputation grew. School records described him as diligent, not rebellious. He avoided fights, preferring solitude in workshops rather than playgrounds. Friends noted that while others dreamed of escaping Gaza, Yasir envisioned transforming it, using technology as weapon, shield, and statement of defiance. Despite hardship, he pursued education with relentless focus. He gained admission to Islamic University of Gaza, excelling in engineering. Professors observed his talent for drone mechanics long before militancy touched his life, noting his unusual grasp of aerodynamics, materials, and control systems. For Yasir, the blockade itself became both barrier and teacher. Deprivation pushed him toward invention. When parts were unavailable, he salvaged motors from discarded toys, cameras from old phones, wings from sheets of aluminum. He thrived by solving impossibilities with ingenuity. Yet Gaza's political atmosphere inevitably intruded. Even in his youth, Yasir's skills attracted attention. Community leaders whispered of a prodigy who might one day help Hamas balance the scales. The path from gifted child to hunted engineer was already quietly forming. Awais Yasir's ideology emerged slowly, shaped less by fiery rhetoric and more by lived experience. Growing up amid airstrikes, sieges, and funerals, he internalized a worldview of resistance. Technology became his language of defiance, a way to counter overwhelming Israeli superiority. Unlike many peers, Yasir did not speak with slogans. He avoided public demonstrations, rarely raised his voice, and never indulged in boastful posturing. Instead, he expressed belief through work, channeling conviction into machines that could fly unseen across guarded skies. Colleagues described him as disciplined, bordering on obsessive. He could spend entire nights calibrating a motor, adjusting angles by millimeters, rejecting sleep until flight paths were flawless. Hunger and fatigue mattered little once his mind locked on perfection. Outside laboratories, he was almost invisible. He avoided social gatherings, ate simply, and dressed plainly. Friends joked that he wore the same gray jacket for years. His pleasures were quiet: tea, old mechanical manuals, and occasional chess games with neighbors. Yasir possessed quirks that unsettled even close companions. He distrusted digital communication, refusing smartphones, and preferred handwritten notes destroyed after reading. He often spoke in mechanical metaphors, describing politics as circuits, enemies as voltage, and betrayal as a short circuit burning entire systems. Yet beneath his stoicism lay a concealed tenderness. He adored his younger siblings, patiently repairing their toys, guiding their studies, and shielding them from conflict's harsh realities. That paradox, family warmth alongside militant invention, defined him more sharply than ideology alone ever could. Within Hamas circles, Awais Yasir earned the nickname, the Mechanic. It was not glamorous, but it reflected his identity. He was the man who fixed what others broke, who transformed scraps into functioning machines, who gave drones their silent wings. Among close comrades, another title circulated, the Spider. The name emerged from his habit of weaving delicate circuits resembling webs, each strand interconnected. It was whispered that his network of inventions mirrored the patience and precision of an arachnid predator. Yasir himself rarely embraced nicknames. When pressed, he described himself simply as an engineer of necessity. He rejected the idea of heroism, insisting that circumstances, not personal ambition, had shaped his role in Gaza's technological battlefield of survival and defiance. Still, his self-image carried quiet pride. In private conversations, he admitted seeing machines as extensions of willpower, proof that ingenuity could defy limitations imposed by siege. He believed his work elevated Gaza from victimhood to capability, even if shadowed by inevitable peril. The shift from engineer to militant was gradual, not abrupt. In university, Awais Yasir remained focused on academics, yet contacts slowly emerged. Senior Hamas operatives, aware of his brilliance, began attending his demonstrations and testing his prototypes under cautious supervision. At first, Yasir resisted alignment with politics. He saw himself as a builder, not a fighter. But every airstrike, every blockade tightening Gaza's lifelines, pulled him further toward resistance. Friends recalled his silence hardening whenever news of civilian casualties reached him. His earliest contributions were non-lethal. He designed surveillance drones to monitor borders, small flying cameras stitched from spare parts. These machines offered Hamas new eyes in the sky, gathering intelligence beyond barriers. This marked his first real step into militancy. Eventually, surveillance evolved into weaponization. Senior commanders asked whether explosives could be carried. Yasir hesitated, understanding the consequences, yet his designs proved adaptable. By 2015, prototypes emerged that transformed drones into tools of attack. His workshop became an unofficial Hamas laboratory. Politics followed invention. Yasir's growing reputation brought him deeper into Hamas structures. He attended secret briefings, joined strategic committees, and accepted limited oversight. While still introverted, he understood that his work now bound him to Gaza's broader resistance project. Thus, the transformation was complete. No longer merely an engineer, Yasir became both symbol and asset, entwined in Hamas's future. His private identity blurred with public militancy. The child who once fixed radios now fixed the balance of technological warfare. The first brush with authorities came in 2012, when Israeli intelligence intercepted parts shipments destined for Gaza. Within crates of medical equipment lay miniature motors and navigation chips. Investigators traced designs back to Yasir, marking him quietly on regional watch lists. Later that year, his name surfaced in Egyptian intelligence reports. Crossing through Rafah, he allegedly carried blueprints folded into a hollowed textbook. Egyptian border guards confiscated the material, but lacking evidence, released him. Still, the shadow of suspicion deepened. By 2013, he had become a person of interest. Israel accused him of orchestrating smuggling networks for drone components. Though never directly arrested, his associates were detained, questioned, and sometimes tortured. Yasir himself operated like smoke, vanishing before raids arrived. Local Gaza police also kept files. Rumors suggested that rival factions complained about his dominance, accusing him of monopolizing engineering talent. Although Hamas protected him, this attention revealed how his technical brilliance increasingly blurred lines between civilian innovation and clandestine crime. One defining moment occurred in 2014 during Israel's Operation Protective Edge. Authorities claimed Yasir's drones attempted surveillance over Israeli tanks. Though quickly downed, this incident placed him firmly in enemy crosshairs. From that moment, his activities were no longer tolerable irritations but strategic threats. Each allegation tightened the net. International agencies exchanged dossiers, photographs, intercepted communications. Yet Yasir remained elusive, hidden within Gaza's labyrinthine streets, shielded by Hamas, respected by peers. His early crimes did not yield prison sentences, but they etched him into intelligence archives permanently. Though never formally sentenced by Israeli courts, reports circulated that Awais Yasir was detained briefly in 2015 during a border operation. Witnesses alleged he disappeared for several weeks, only to resurface gaunt, with silent eyes and unexplained scars across wrists. Friends insisted he spoke little of the ordeal. However, whispers suggested he endured interrogation sessions marked by sleep deprivation, stress positions, and electric shocks. These methods, though denied officially, aligned with testimonies from countless Palestinians subjected to similar treatment. Rather than breaking him, detention appeared to harden Yasir. He grew more guarded, more secretive, and increasingly distrustful of outsiders. He refused to travel unaccompanied, abandoned digital devices altogether, and communicated strictly through face-to-face meetings in secured, monitored environments. Torture, whether real or perceived, amplified his commitment. He began referring to technology not as mere innovation, but as survival against cruelty. Those who knew him sensed that prison transformed Yasir from reluctant engineer into ideological combatant, certain of his chosen path. After his brief detention, Awais Yasir's path intersected more directly with Hamas leadership. By 2016, his skills were too valuable to remain peripheral. Senior figures invited him into secret cells responsible for research, development, and experimental technologies designed for conflict. Within these circles, Yasir established a reputation for pragmatism. Unlike ideologues who prioritized fiery speeches, he valued functionality. He urged Hamas to treat technology as battlefield equalizer, transforming their limited resources into tools that challenged Israel's overwhelming military supremacy. Some accounts suggested he co-founded a covert engineering wing within Hamas, informally known as Unit 940. This group specialized in modifying drones, smuggling components through tunnels, and training younger recruits in mechanics, coding, and basic aeronautical design under absolute secrecy. Unit 940 operated with decentralized structure. Yasir avoided drawing attention by distributing responsibilities among students and technicians. Each workshop resembled a spider web, strands connecting but never centralized, ensuring that even if raided, the full scope of operations remained hidden from outside eyes. Colleagues described him as reluctant leader, uncomfortable with command but respected for brilliance. He rarely raised his voice during strategy meetings. Instead, he presented diagrams, calculations, and prototypes, letting precision speak louder than slogans. His authority rested on expertise, not charisma. Through this clandestine work, Yasir cemented his place in Hamas's hierarchy. He was no longer a mere engineer but architect of a technological frontier. His innovations blurred the line between militant necessity and scientific advancement, ensuring his survival meant more than personal continuity. By 2017, Awais Yasir's operations expanded beyond simple drone prototypes. Smuggling networks stretched through Rafah tunnels, carrying motors, cameras, and GPS chips. Each shipment bore disguises, labeled as kitchen supplies, humanitarian aid, or electronics for repair shops, but destined for weaponized innovation. Israeli intelligence documented repeated interceptions. Packages arriving from Turkey and Malaysia often contained components linked to Yasir's designs. Diplomatic protests followed, accusing foreign actors of negligence. Yet despite seizures, a steady trickle of equipment continued feeding his underground workshops. Parallel to smuggling, Hamas intensified kidnappings of collaborators suspected of spying for Israel. While Yasir was not directly involved in abductions, his drones sometimes provided surveillance for operations. This indirect connection further tied his name to militant actions beyond engineering. Killings followed as Gaza's shadow war escalated. In 2018, Israeli officials accused Yasir of developing targeting drones used in attempted strikes near border outposts. Though largely unsuccessful, the attacks marked a turning point. His work was now linked not just to defense but attempted executions. Regional intelligence agencies began labeling him not only a strategist, but an enabler of lethal operations. The transition from mere technical innovator to participant in a cycle of smuggling, kidnappings, and killings was complete. His reputation crossed borders swiftly. Each operation raised his value within Hamas, but amplified the danger surrounding him. His innovations no longer represented experiments but instruments of bloodshed. To enemies, this justified extraordinary measures. To allies, it proved that Yasir had transcended invention. He had become a battlefield asset. On March 14, 2018, Israeli defense officials reported intercepting a drone carrying a small explosive payload near the Erez crossing. Investigators traced design schematics back to components familiar in Yasir's workshops, confirming his fingerprints on one of Hamas's boldest experiments. Later that year, July 22, 2018, Israeli jets targeted a suspected Hamas drone facility in northern Gaza. The strike leveled the building, killing 2 technicians. Intelligence briefings suggested Yasir had left the site hours before, narrowly escaping certain assassination. In May 2019, amid border protests, Hamas launched multiple surveillance drones to monitor Israeli troop movements. Analysts recognized flight signatures identical to prototypes Yasir once tested. Though unarmed, the machines provided intelligence that directed mortar fire into military staging areas. On October 7, 2020, Egyptian intelligence intercepted shipments of drone-grade carbon fiber disguised as water filters. Under interrogation, smugglers admitted the cargo was bound for Yasir's laboratories. This revealed his expanding logistics network and deep reliance on regional smuggling corridors. By November 2021, reports surfaced of attempted drone strikes on Israeli naval patrols off Gaza's coast. Israeli naval officials downed the devices swiftly, yet fragments again pointed to Yasir's designs. Each failure still demonstrated growing ambition, drawing further global scrutiny. The final documented incident came in June 2022, when a drone carrying reconnaissance cameras penetrated 10 kilometers into Israeli territory before being destroyed. Officials labeled the breach unprecedented. Though small, it cemented Yasir's status as existential threat, demanding permanent resolution. By late 2022, intelligence agencies across the Middle East had converged on one conclusion. Awais Yasir was no longer simply a problem for Israel, but a regional destabilizer. His name appeared on clandestine lists circulated between Tel Aviv, Cairo, and Washington. Israel's Shin Bet and Mossad classified him as high value. Reports indicated his drones could bypass the Iron Dome's interception algorithms if deployed in swarms. Such potential placed him alongside Hamas commanders responsible for rockets and tunnel warfare on priority elimination rosters. American officials echoed these concerns. Defense analysts warned that Yasir's engineering breakthroughs threatened to shift asymmetric warfare globally, offering militant groups a template. Classified Pentagon assessments, leaked in fragments, highlighted his ability to innovate despite crippling siege and resource scarcity. Egypt, though hostile to Hamas, maintained delicate balance. Cairo intelligence briefings identified Yasir as destabilizing influence, whose smuggling networks jeopardized border security. While Egypt stopped short of active pursuit, it quietly shared files, feeding the intelligence mosaic tightening around his movements. Interpol reportedly debated whether to list him on watch databases for dual-use technology procurement. Though not formally pursued by international law enforcement, whispers of his activities echoed in arms control circles, marking him as shadowy figure operating beneath diplomatic radar. Within Gaza, his notoriety spread as well. Posters praising the mechanic appeared in militant safe houses, framing him as symbol of defiance. Yet admiration carried risk. The louder his name became, the easier it was for enemies to justify targeted elimination. The convergence of Israeli, American, and regional interests sealed Yasir's fate. By 2022, he ranked among Hamas's most wanted assets, not for speeches or politics, but for machines he built. Small, unassuming drones that threatened to redraw Gaza's battlefield forever. The first serious attempt reportedly came in late 2018. Israeli drones fired missiles at a suspected workshop in Shuja'iyya. The building crumbled into dust, killing 3 engineers. Yet Yasir had departed minutes earlier, narrowly escaping death. Surveillance failures haunted his hunters. In 2019, a covert poisoning plot emerged. Intelligence leaks suggested that agents attempted to lace imported drone components with slow-acting toxins. When assembled, fumes would be inhaled by Yasir. The plan unraveled when parts were intercepted, but intent was unmistakable. By mid-2020, another strike unfolded. While traveling between Khan Yunis and Rafah, Yasir's vehicle was targeted by an Israeli quadcopter drone. A sudden misfire spared him. Witnesses described the explosion consuming the road but missing the car by meters. Later that year, anonymous sources claimed Egyptian security attempted to detain him at Rafah crossing. Officials denied involvement, yet whispers insisted Cairo considered delivering him to Israel discreetly. Yasir, alerted beforehand, avoided travel altogether, reinforcing his reclusive patterns of survival. In 2021, Israeli intelligence allegedly deployed cyber weapons against his workshop. Malware infiltrated his computers, erasing design files and sabotaging communication. Though devastating temporarily, Yasir reverted to paper schematics and manual circuits. Digital sabotage slowed progress but failed to silence him. The most brazen attempt came in May 2022. Reports described a targeted bombing near Gaza's coastline, timed as Yasir inspected prototype drones. The blast destroyed equipment but again spared him. Survival began to seem improbable, feeding his legend but sealing inevitability. Each failure pushed Mossad toward greater precision. Standard airstrikes and poisons had proven unreliable. By mid-2022, Israeli planners concluded that extraordinary measures were required, an operation blending deception, creativity, and symbolism. Thus began the design of the Spider, a weapon of shadows. By late 2022, even Hamas operatives whispered that Awais Yasir's survival defied logic. Every attempt against him grew closer, every escape narrower. To his allies, this resilience appeared miraculous. To his enemies, it confirmed that persistence only sharpened Mossad's determination. Intelligence chatter described him as living on borrowed time. His routines shrank to hotel rooms, hidden workshops, and guarded tunnels. Yet every innovation he produced reminded Israel of the danger. Tolerance for his survival dwindled into a singular decision: elimination. The symbolism of his chosen death method became part of psychological warfare. Mossad operatives sought not merely to kill, but to terrify, leaving a calling card that conveyed inevitability. In whispers, they called it the Spider's final web. The story of Awais Yasir cannot be separated from Gaza's larger battlefield. Since Hamas's takeover in 2007, the enclave has endured relentless blockades, wars, and airstrikes. Each escalation sharpened divisions, hardening Hamas's resolve, while deepening Israel's determination to suppress emerging threats. The 2008-2009 Gaza war marked the beginning of a cycle. Hamas's rocket attacks prompted Israel's Operation Cast Lead, devastating infrastructure and civilians. Yet amid rubble, militancy survived, mutating into new forms. This resilience ensured figures like Yasir found fertile ground. By 2014, Operation Protective Edge further intensified conflict. Israel aimed to dismantle Hamas's tunnel networks, while Hamas sought to bypass Israel's technological dominance. It was during this crucible of destruction that drone warfare became central, elevating engineers to roles once reserved for generals. Each battle layered grievance upon grievance. For Israel, civilian casualties became tragic byproducts of eliminating militant infrastructure. For Palestinians, bombed homes and lost children became fuel for resistance. Yasir's trajectory reflected this environment, a child of war turned innovator of asymmetric retaliation. The broader conflict also extended beyond Gaza's borders. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran in Tehran, and Qatar in Doha each monitored events closely. Each saw in Hamas's struggle either a proxy battlefield, a moral cause, or a destabilizing headache requiring constant management. Drone warfare represented more than weaponry. It symbolized evolution of resistance itself. Just as rockets once shifted dynamics, drones promised new psychological pressure. Israel's heavily fortified borders mattered less if skies above could be infiltrated. Yasir's rise was inseparable from this technological shift. Thus, the broader conflict became stage and justification. Israel viewed drone engineers as existential dangers. Hamas celebrated them as innovators of defiance. The battlefield of Gaza was no longer confined to streets and tunnels. It now extended into contested airspace. Israel's position was unambiguous. Any technological leap by Hamas was framed as existential threat. Government spokesmen argued drones could bypass Iron Dome, targeting civilians in Tel Aviv. Behind closed doors, Israeli security cabinets authorized Mossad to pursue engineers like Yasir globally, without compromise. The United States mirrored this stance. Washington categorized Hamas as terrorist organization and regarded drone advancements as destabilizing to the region. Pentagon analysts feared such technologies could be exported to other militant groups. Quietly, American intelligence supported Israeli monitoring of Yasir's operations. Iran, by contrast, positioned itself as benefactor. Tehran praised Hamas's drone program as extension of resistance axis. Weapons experts from Iran allegedly supplied designs and advice. Though unconfirmed, Hamas propaganda frequently credited friends abroad for accelerating technological development against Israel. Qatar played an ambivalent role. Doha maintained ties with Hamas, funding reconstruction projects in Gaza, while also assuring Washington it discouraged militant escalation. Yet Israeli intelligence believed Qatari funds indirectly enabled Yasir's laboratories to function, blurring lines between humanitarian aid and military innovation. Egypt's stance remained pragmatic. Cairo distrusted Hamas, fearing spillover of militancy into Sinai. Egyptian intelligence monitored Yasir's smuggling routes through Rafah closely, occasionally seizing shipments. Still, Egypt avoided open confrontation, preferring discreet coordination with Israel while maintaining plausible deniability to Palestinian factions. Turkey added complexity. Ankara publicly criticized Israel's operations in Gaza, framing them as disproportionate. Though no direct evidence tied Turkey to Yasir's work, shipments from Istanbul ports frequently surfaced in interception reports. Diplomats denied involvement, but suspicions lingered in intelligence circles worldwide. Thus, Yasir's story unfolded across a geopolitical chessboard. Each state's position shaped his survival and eventual demise. Allies emboldened him, adversaries hunted him, and cautious neighbors watched closely, unwilling to be caught in crossfire of his technological revolution. Awais Yasir mattered because he represented a rare convergence of ingenuity, ideology, and circumstance. In Gaza, where scarcity defined daily life, he turned deprivation into invention. His drones became more than machines. They were symbols of resilience against overwhelming military dominance. Unlike political leaders or commanders, Yasir embodied the hidden war of engineers. His work was invisible until its consequences appeared above skies. Each prototype suggested that borders, fences, and iron domes were vulnerable. This potential terrified adversaries and emboldened allies. He also bridged generational divides within Hamas. For older militants, his drones validated decades of sacrifice by providing new weapons. For younger recruits, he demonstrated that technological expertise was as valuable as rifles, transforming resistance into something intellectual as well as physical. To Israel, Yasir's significance was strategic. He was not easily replaceable. Training another engineer with his skills required years, resources, and rare temperament. Eliminating him meant setting Hamas back technologically, disrupting projects that could otherwise alter balance of power across the region. Globally, his story mattered because it revealed how asymmetry evolves. Militants once armed with stones, then rifles, then rockets, now wielded drones. Yasir's rise marked a new era, where small devices threatened to destabilize nations, redefine warfare, and erode traditional security paradigms. In short, Yasir mattered because he embodied possibility. For Hamas, he was future of resistance. For Israel, he was nightmare of vulnerability. For outside powers, he was proof that warfare's frontier was no longer national armies but individuals with tools and determination. In early August 2022, a team of Mossad operatives quietly entered Gaza through circuitous routes. Some posed as aid workers, others as visiting businessmen. Their identities were layered in forged passports, each alias carefully constructed to withstand cursory checks and suspicion. Travel records suggested staggered arrivals. One operative landed in Cairo under the name Daniel Cohen, later crossing Rafah disguised as logistics coordinator. Another entered through Jordan, presenting as Turkish technician. Each pathway ensured no pattern betrayed their collective purpose. The operatives carried minimal luggage. Inside innocuous cases were concealed devices, fiber cameras, micro-drones for reconnaissance, and the most unusual item, a mechanical spider prototype, disguised as toy but engineered to deliver toxin with surgical precision. Its role remained carefully compartmentalized. Within Gaza, the team avoided attention. They rotated hotels, rented nondescript apartments, and blended into humanitarian delegations. Each movement was mapped with discipline, ensuring no operative lingered long enough to attract gossip or recognition. Their presence was a shadow against chaos. By August 15th, they converged silently near the Al-Deira hotel. Using encrypted radios, they established surveillance of Yasir's room. Their mission was defined not in hours, but in heartbeats. Infiltrate, strike invisibly, and vanish before Gaza even sensed their approach. On August 16, 2022, two operatives checked into the Al-Deira hotel using forged European passports. They selected adjacent rooms on the 4th floor, directly across the hall from Awais Yasir. Their covers: telecommunications consultants attending reconstruction meetings in Gaza City. Hotel staff remembered their efficiency. No excessive luggage, no idle chatter. They tipped generously but avoided eye contact. Within hours, they had modified their rooms, concealing surveillance kits behind ventilation grates, wiring cameras through alarm sensors, and masking interference beneath ordinary static. From concealed vantage points, they monitored Yasir's movements. He left his room briefly for tea in the lobby, returning with newspapers tucked under his arm. Most hours he remained inside, curtains drawn, working silently at his cluttered desk. Another operative, disguised as maintenance staff, patrolled corridors with toolbox in hand. Inside were no wrenches, only fiber-optic cameras, lock-picking devices, and the small transmitter used to piggyback onto hotel security feeds. From that moment, every floor became their hunting ground. At night, they studied his routines. Lights extinguished at 2 a.m., kettle boiling every evening at 9, notes scribbled across notepads before carefully burned. The surveillance confirmed what dossiers predicted. Yasir lived like a man already pursued, paranoid yet brilliant. Each observation narrowed options. The operatives knew explosives would be conspicuous, gunfire impossible. Poison promised discretion. The spider, already calibrated in their room, waited in a sealed case. Its placement required timing, stealth, and an entry that left no trace behind. August 17, 2022 began like any other day in Gaza, the city stirring under the hum of generators and distant echoes of unrest. Inside room 407, Awais Yasir rose late, brewed tea, and immersed himself in sketches of drone circuitry. By morning, Mossad operatives had already positioned themselves. One lingered in the lobby, reading a newspaper but scanning entrances. Another posed as hotel cleaner, pushing a cart down corridors stacked with fresh linens. A third waited outside in idling vehicle. At precisely 10:15 a.m., security footage shows Yasir briefly leaving his room. He walked to reception, exchanged words with staff, and requested additional stationery. Those 5 minutes provided operatives their window, narrow yet sufficient for a decisive entry. Using a master keycard forged from scanned data, the cleaner slipped into room 407. Movements were swift. Curtains remained drawn, desk clutter untouched. From the cart, he retrieved a small box containing the mechanical spider, setting it discreetly upon the nightstand. The device resembled a harmless toy, metallic legs folded tightly, but its body concealed microsyringes preloaded with neurotoxin. Activated remotely, it would crawl short distances, delivering lethal injection without visible struggle. Once withdrawn, the scene could mimic natural cardiac failure. At 10:19 a.m., Yasir returned, passing the cleaner in the hallway. Surveillance cameras captured nothing unusual. A polite nod, a cart rolling away. Yet inside, death had already been staged. The spider waited silently, its sensors primed for remote command. Operatives rotated throughout the day, maintaining discreet watch. Yasir worked, unaware, sipping tea, scribbling notes. By evening, as Gaza's horizon dimmed, one operative in an adjacent room prepared the signal device. At exactly 9:47 p.m. he pressed the trigger. The assassination hinged on meticulous application of espionage tools. At its heart was the spider, a marvel of miniaturization. Crafted from lightweight alloys, it moved silently across surfaces. Its legs housed microneedles, designed to pierce skin and inject neurotoxin undetected. The toxin itself was laboratory engineered. Analysts later speculated it was derived from synthetic paralytics, quick to shut down cardiac rhythm without leaving visible trace. Within minutes, respiration would falter. Within an hour, death resembled natural collapse, confounding initial medical examination. Entry into Yasir's room demanded equally advanced tools. Operatives carried lockpicks disguised as ballpoint pens, wireless code cloning devices to mimic hotel keycards, and scramblers that muted surveillance cameras for mere seconds. enough to slip through without alerting hotel security networks. Communication was handled through encrypted radios resembling ordinary smartphones. Each device carried rotating digital keys, ensuring even intercepted transmissions dissolved into gibberish. Orders came from handlers abroad, transmitted through layered relays that concealed both origin and destination behind digital fog. Exfiltration relied on forged documents and multiple escape routes. Motorcycles waited in alleys, boats prepared off Gaza's coastline, tunnels remained mapped as contingencies. Mossad's strength lay not only in striking, but in guaranteeing departure before questions could solidify. Not everything proceeded flawlessly. At 9:30 p.m., just minutes before activation, a hotel staff member unexpectedly knocked on Yasir's door, delivering requested stationery. The operative across the hall froze, fearing exposure. Yet Yasir accepted the papers calmly, unaware of danger. Moments later, another scare unfolded. A Hamas security patrol entered the lobby, conducting routine checks on guests. Two operatives seated nearby feigned indifference, hearts racing as officers scanned passports. Their forgeries held, but one error could have unraveled everything instantly. Inside the adjacent room, the handler hesitated with his trigger. Any disturbance, any intrusion, could compromise the mission irreparably. For 15 excruciating minutes, the operation hung in balance. Every second a test of nerves, discipline, and invisible control. Only when patrols departed and hallways cleared did the order come through. Proceed. Silence returned. The spider stirred from dormancy. Its legs twitched, its tiny sensors aligned. The most improbable weapon in Gaza was about to deliver a message of inevitability. At 9:47 p.m., the signal pulsed through encrypted radio waves. Inside room 407, the spider unfolded, legs stretching with mechanical grace. It crawled across the desk, moved silently along the floor, and scaled the chair where Yasir sat unsuspecting. The injection was instantaneous. A needle pierced skin at his ankle, barely noticeable. Yasir winced slightly, mistaking it for insect bite, then continued sketching diagrams. Within minutes, his breathing slowed. His hands trembled, pen slipping from his grasp, heart rhythm collapsing. He slumped forward onto scattered notes. The spider retracted automatically, crawling back beneath the nightstand. Its mission complete, it powered down, appearing lifeless. To any casual observer, Yasir appeared victim of sudden cardiac arrest, nothing more. By 10:15 p.m., operatives confirmed immobility through thermal sensors. They withdrew silently, leaving no trace, no broken locks, no forced entry, no fingerprints. The spider remained behind, both weapon and signature, a chilling message to Hamas. Genius alone could not defy inevitability. On the morning of August 18, 2022, hotel staff knocked repeatedly on the door of room 407. Receiving no answer, they entered with a spare key. Inside, they found Awais Yasir slumped over his desk, motionless, tea still half-finished. At first, staff assumed natural causes. His expression was calm, body intact, no signs of struggle. Yet unease grew when they noticed the peculiar mechanical spider resting on the nightstand. Its metallic frame glinted unnaturally under the fluorescent ceiling lights. Within minutes, Hamas security officers flooded the hotel. The floor was sealed, guests questioned, surveillance cameras seized. Murmurs spread through corridors. Was this assassination, sabotage, or warning? The object beside the body became both evidence and enigma overnight. Family members arrived in shock, insisting Yasir had no medical history suggesting sudden death. His colleagues wept, yet spoke cautiously, aware that suspicion now hung heavy. Gaza's streets buzzed with rumors. To some, the spider proved Mossad's hand. To others, it seemed impossible fiction. Doctors at Gaza's central morgue conducted the autopsy under heavy guard. Initial examinations revealed no gunshot wounds, no fractures, and no external trauma. The absence of visible injury only deepened mystery. To casual observers, Yasir's body appeared untouched, preserved in eerie stillness. Toxicologists discovered subtle anomalies. Trace compounds lingered in blood samples, resembling synthetic paralytics. Heart tissue showed signs of sudden arrhythmia, inconsistent with natural cardiac arrest. Yet the dosage was microscopic, leaving investigators unsure whether they confronted advanced poison or unknown experimental agent. Hamas officials demanded second opinion from foreign specialists. Samples were smuggled discreetly to Cairo and Beirut, where independent laboratories confirmed suspicion. Yasir had been killed by engineered neurotoxin. Its chemical fingerprint bore sophistication beyond local capabilities, pointing toward foreign intelligence expertise. The spider device itself was dissected next. Engineers identified microneedles within its legs, hollow channels consistent with delivery systems. Its internal circuitry contained components manufactured in Europe, fueling accusations that Mossad operated with global supply chains. Forensic science transformed speculation into mounting certainty of assassination. When Hamas investigators seized hotel surveillance footage, they uncovered anomalies. Several cameras along the fourth-floor corridor flickered briefly around the time of Yasir's death. The interruptions lasted seconds, yet coincided precisely with operatives' movements. The precision suggested deliberate tampering, not accidental malfunction. Closer examination revealed shadowy figures dressed as cleaners and technicians. Their faces were partially obscured, but outlines of toolboxes and carts matched eyewitness accounts. Slow-motion playback exposed fragments of behavior inconsistent with genuine staff, gestures rehearsed, steps measured, eyes scanning rather than serving. Investigators traced check-in documents of two guests who had occupied adjacent rooms. Their passports, seemingly European, contained irregular fonts and misaligned holograms. Cross-referencing revealed the identities were fabrications, with numbers linked to previous intelligence operations across multiple continents. Suspicion hardened into certainty. International journalists soon obtained leaked images. Newspapers in London, Paris, and Berlin splashed headlines of forged passports used in Gaza assassination. European governments expressed outrage, launching inquiries into document theft. Yet Mossad remained silent, adhering to policy of neither confirming nor denying operations abroad. The scandal expanded when Interpol flagged similarities with past covert missions. Patterns of false identities, recycled passports, and brief hotel stays pointed toward systematic intelligence methodology. Hamas declared evidence irrefutable. Allies decried violations of sovereignty. Israel, however, weathered storm with practiced denial. The CCTV footage and passport revelations shifted narrative from mysterious death to deliberate killing. Each frame, each forged page, peeled back layers of invisibility. Yet the culprits had already vanished, leaving only shadows on screens and the cold body of an engineer silenced forever. The news of Awais Yasir's assassination spread rapidly. Within hours, Hamas released official statements accusing Mossad of executing a targeted killing inside Gaza. Leaders framed his death as act of war, vowing retaliation. Streets filled with mourners chanting against Israel's unseen hand. Internationally, reactions diverged sharply. Iran praised Yasir as martyr, declaring his innovations proof of Palestinian ingenuity. Tehran pledged greater support, hinting at expanded technological cooperation. Israel's allies, while silent officially, quietly acknowledged removal of significant threat from regional battlefield equation. European capitals expressed anger over passport scandal. Foreign ministries summoned Israeli ambassadors, demanding explanations for stolen identities. Diplomatic protests, however, stopped short of sanctions. Public outrage simmered, but behind closed doors, governments recognized effectiveness of operation in neutralizing Hamas's drone program. Egypt and Qatar urged restraint, fearing escalation. Cairo reinforced border security, tightening Rafah monitoring to prevent further smuggling. Doha, meanwhile, emphasized humanitarian rebuilding efforts, distancing itself from militancy while quietly continuing financial aid. The assassination thus intensified delicate balancing acts across Middle East diplomacy. At the United Nations, Palestinian representatives demanded investigation, citing violations of sovereignty. Debates raged in Security Council chambers, but resolutions stalled under predictable vetoes. The world condemned assassination rhetorically, yet intelligence agencies privately studied operations' ingenuity, acknowledging Mossad's audacity and precision. Ultimately, global fallout revealed familiar paradox. Official voices decried targeted killing, while shadow networks applauded efficiency. Yasir's death underscored a harsh reality. States may protest in daylight, but in shadows, they quietly adapt, preparing to replicate or defend against such lethal innovations. Behind every assassination lies a machinery unseen, a phantom bureaucracy guiding invisible hands. Mossad's operation against Awais Yasir was not improvised, but orchestrated through layers of committees, analysts, and clerks whose names will never appear in headlines or memorials. In secure offices far from Gaza's dust, decisions passed through channels disguised as ordinary paperwork. Requests for travel budgets, equipment shipments, and cover identities appeared mundane on paper. Yet each form, each stamp, moved closer to one man's erasure. This bureaucracy operated like shadow empire, feeding off secrecy. Junior officers drafted memos no civilian would ever glimpse. Senior directors debated scenarios, balancing politics against risk. The entire apparatus functioned with chilling normalcy, as though death were administrative routine. The phantom bureaucracy ensured deniability. Documents vanished after signatures, files dissolved into encrypted archives. Should exposure occur, leaders could claim ignorance, pointing fingers at clerks or contractors. The true architects remained insulated, their power hidden beneath layers of deliberate ambiguity. Thus, the spider's crawl inside Gaza hotel room was culmination of paperwork, protocol, and invisible approval chains. Assassination was not chaos, but order, an empire of silence where bureaucracy itself became weapon as lethal as any blade. Beyond bureaucracy stood the invisible legions, elite operatives forged in secrecy. Each belonged to mythic archetype, the forger crafting identities from stolen fragments, the watcher blending into crowds with unblinking patience, the technician sculpting devices like spiders that carried death without sound. They were ghosts in plain sight, soldiers without uniforms. Their victories could never be celebrated, their failures erased from records. To their agencies, they were expendable yet indispensable, living embodiments of state power projected into foreign shadows. Legends circulated within intelligence communities. The infiltrator who vanished into refugee camps, the assassin who walked out of hotel rooms unseen, the courier who carried nothing yet delivered secrets. Each figure reinforced aura of inevitability surrounding covert operations. For the outside world, these legions did not exist. They had no names, no graves, no histories beyond whispers. Yet their presence was undeniable, shaping outcomes of wars, dictating survival of leaders, and ensuring men like Yasir never escaped shadows hunting them. The spider in Gaza was not Mossad's first signature. Decades earlier in Lillehammer, Norway, agents misidentified a man as Black September operative. He was shot in front of his family. Outcry followed, yet the program of targeted killings endured silently. In 1997, Jordanian streets witnessed another drama. Operatives attempted to poison Hamas leader Khaled Mashal, using toxin sprayed into his ear. The plan unraveled when agents were caught. International pressure forced Israel to release Sheikh Ahmed Yassin in exchange. Dubai 2010 provided further echoes. Mahmoud al-Mabhou, Hamas weapons broker, was found dead in hotel room. CCTV revealed operatives in wigs, disguises, and stolen passports. The method was crude compared to the spider, but the message identical. Distance offers no protection. Lebanon bore similar scars. Hezbollah commanders fell to car bombs disguised as routine accidents. Each death carried Mossad's unseen fingerprints, devices timed to detonate in traffic, or snipers erasing figures whose movements were studied for months. Patterns repeated, each mission refining precision. These echoes of old missions framed Yasir's death as chapter and continuum. The names changed, tools evolved, but rhythm remained constant. Mossad struck not just individuals but mythologies, reminding adversaries that past failures were prologue to perfected futures. At the highest tier sat leaders cloaked in authority, the gods behind the curtain. They rarely touched weapons, yet with signatures and nods, lives were extinguished. Their flaws were human, but their power reshaped destinies across borders, unseen yet undeniable. They debated missions as abstractions, targets, timelines, collateral, never names, never faces. To them, Yasir was not husband, brother, or son, but line on chart. In their cold calculus, erasure preserved security. Thus, puppet masters pulled strings while shadows performed the killing. 2 days after his death, Gaza's streets overflowed with mourners. Awais Yasir's body, draped in green Hamas flags, was carried through narrow alleys. Loudspeakers blared verses, while crowds chanted defiance. To them, the engineer had become martyr, symbol of resistance. Hamas leaders framed the funeral as both tribute and rallying cry. Speeches praised his ingenuity, declaring drones would continue to fly despite assassination. Photographs of the mechanical spider circulated, transforming weapon of death into chilling emblem of survival. For his family, grief eclipsed politics. Relatives wept beside his grave, recalling a quiet man who repaired radios and played chess. Yet personal mourning was overtaken by spectacle. His burial became theater of defiance, watched by allies and adversaries alike. International media captured scenes, amplifying tension. Analysts describe funeral as display of resilience, warning Israel that silencing one engineer would not end pursuit of technological parity. In Gaza's memory, Yasir's immediate impact was not disappearance, but elevation into legend overnight. In the months after his death, Hamas scrambled to fill the void. Workshops once overseen by Yasir fell silent, projects delayed as apprentices struggled without his precision. His absence fractured networks, slowing drone development that once promised to alter Gaza's battlefield. Yet martyrdom breathed new urgency. Young engineers inspired by his legend volunteered to continue his work. Some trained abroad in secrecy, others studied fragments of his notebooks. Though progress faltered, determination hardened, ensuring Yasir's influence persisted long after burial. For Israel, his elimination offered temporary relief. Military officials noted decline in drone incursions. Yet strategists cautioned victory was fleeting. As long as conflict endured, another Yasir would inevitably rise, shaped by siege, sharpened by necessity, hunted by shadows again. Internationally, his assassination reinforced precedent of targeted killings. States studied the operation, adopting lessons for their own covert agendas. Yasir's death, intended to close chapter, instead widened dialogue on ethics of assassination, sovereignty, and whether precision killings resolved conflicts or perpetuated them. In the end, Awais Yasir's death changed little in the grand scheme of geopolitics. Gaza remained besieged, Israel remained vigilant, and the cycle endured. Yet his story revealed how individuals could terrify states, and how states could erase individuals without trace. What lingered was not only silence of an extinguished mind, but reminder that espionage operates beyond morality. Governments sanction killers, bureaucracies normalize erasure, and tools like spiders crawl from imagination into lethal reality. Truth remains buried in shadows, where accountability dissolves into whispers.